So working with Bootstrap, it gives us a super amount of flexibility, especially when it comes to these column widths. So let's say, for instance, we still want a 3-column website, but we want to shrink down the 2 side columns and have more space within that center section. So it's really easily done and adjusted here within Bootstrap. And the other good thing about Bootstrap is that it's mobile friendly, all ready to go. So we see here that once we hit that breaking point of MD, we see that the columns actually start to stack one on top of the other. So that's all that the center part says. Is this gives us an indication of when the website needs to stack, and I do have my screen size enlarged to 250%. So that's so I'm going to change it to small so that we get a little bit more time with the different sections before we actually break and we get them stacked one on top of the other. So now within this lesson, let's continue to build out our web page and let's add in some images. And with Bootstrap, you've got some options to style some images as well. So let's take a look at those. Open up our content here. We're going to use some of these lorem pixel images. So I've got this one over here. So maybe we'll just copy that source code and we'll dump some images into these sections. So one image there, and maybe I want to have another image down here. I don't want this one to be the exact same, and maybe this one was going to be a super huge image. So I'll show you how Bootstrap can handle that as well. Also, let's add in some text content here. So I'm just going to copy some of this out and create maybe a paragraph here with some content and so on. So actually this should probably go in the center section, because that would just make more sense. And maybe we've got maybe 2 paragraphs of content in there, because we got lots of space in the center section. So there we go. So now we've got our different sections, but oops, we see that our images are flowing over to the different sections. So our images aren't responsive yet. And the good thing about Bootstrap is they have us covered for this. We do have the ability to update those images and make them fluid. And now with Bootstrap 4, we also have the ability to specify, we can specify some additional classes as well. And we can also float the text and a whole lot more. So let's open up the editor and we'll make some adjustments on these images. So we see that this image source here, let's add in our Bootstrap class. So it's Bootstrap class, and we need to specify that we want this image to be fluid. So the class is image img-fluid. So just like that container was fluid, and now once we set it to image fluid, we see that now that image becomes responsive. We still need to take care of that other image, add in that same class so that both of our images are responsive. So basically what it's doing is setting a max width 100, so it doesn't matter what images we're loading, what size they are by default. It's only going to allow to load up to the amount of width that's available within that cell. So we also have ability to update some of our images and align them as well. We can round the corners, so we can float it over to the left or over to the right, and we also need to specify that size as well. So let's create one of these, take one of these images, and I'm going to place it somewhere in the text here. And I'm also add in fluid image, but I'm also going to float it over to the left hand side. So much like what we did over here whenever we did our float MD right, we're going to do float XS left. So basically that means that it's always going to float over to the left, but because we got lots of space, so I do need to cut the size of that image. So maybe this image is 200 by 200. So refresh that and we'll try that again. So we see that we can float the images to the left, we can float them to the right, get them in line with the text, also get them to to fit responsively into the available spacing that we have within our web page, and we see as we adjust, the image sizes adjust as well. So Bootstrap makes it really easy to be responsive. So another thing with images, with Bootstrap 3, we had some additional options with images where we could round them and so on. So Bootstrap 4 has made some adjustments to that. So we do have the ability to do rounded. So this is a separate class. So we could do something, if we wanted this one to be rounded, we could add in that option for rounding of it. We also have the ability to set image thumbnail. So if we want to come out and look like a thumbnail, then we can set it as a thumbnail. So that's going to adjust. So I've adjusted this one to be rounded, and I've adjusted this one to be a thumbnail format. So we see that there are updates here. So this rounded corners, here we've got more of a thumbnail format between the text there. That's how you create images within Bootstrap. Next section, we're going to complete this this particular page, and we're going to add a footer, and we're also going to then look into how we can add map API in order to give location of where we're located at. So you might want to include that on every page, or maybe the contact page, but for this instance we're going to create it here below within that footer section. So all of this is coming up in the next set of lessons.